His touch lingered longer than it should have. My breath caught as his fingers traced the curve of my spine, moving with a confidence that made my skin tingle. I knew I should stop this, should remind him this was just a massage. But when his hands found that sensitive spot just below my shoulder blades, I couldn't help the soft sound that escaped my lips. "Relax," he whispered, his accent thick and warm. "Let me take care of you." The towel slipped slightly, and I felt the heat of his gaze on my exposed skin. This wasn't what I'd planned when I booked the appointment, but as his palms pressed deeper, working away tension I didn't even know I carried, I realized I didn't want him to stop. "Hey, if you're enjoying this start, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything, and trust me, this story is just getting warmed up." I should have known better than to book a late appointment at an upscale spa in Palm Beach, especially one recommended by my friend Sarah with that knowing smile of hers. "Ask for Santos," she'd said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "He has magic hands." At the time, I'd laughed it off, thinking she was just being dramatic about a good deep tissue massage. After 3 months of working 18-hour days as a consultant, my body felt like it was carrying the weight of every stressed-out client I'd dealt with. The Serenity Spa was everything I'd expected from a high-end establishment. Marble floors, soft lighting, the subtle scent of eucalyptus and lavender floating through the air. When I checked in, the receptionist, a perfectly polished woman with flawless makeup, gave me a warm smile and handed me a plush robe. "Santos will be with you in room 7, she said. "He's our most requested therapist." There was something in her tone, a hint of suggestion that made me wonder what exactly I was walking into. Room 7 was dimly lit, with candles flickering on small shelves around the space. Soft instrumental music played from hidden speakers, and the massage table was draped in crisp white linens that looked incredibly inviting. I changed into the robe, my phone buzzing with a text from my husband. "Working late again. Don't wait up." The same message I'd been getting for weeks. I silenced my phone and placed it in the locker, determined to actually relax for once. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, adjusting the robe around me. The door opened, and Santos stepped inside. My breath caught slightly. He was tall, with olive skin and dark hair that looked like he'd just run his fingers through it. His white uniform shirt was fitted just enough to hint at the strong shoulders beneath, and when he smiled, I felt something flutter in my stomach that had nothing to do with nervousness about the massage. "Liv?" His voice carried a subtle accent that I couldn't quite place. "I'm Santos. Thank you for choosing our spa today." He moved with the fluid confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin, and when he extended his hand to shake mine, his fingers were warm and surprisingly soft. "What brings you in today? Any specific areas of tension we should focus on?" I found myself standing a little straighter, suddenly aware of how the robe hugged my curves. Everywhere, honestly. I've been working too much, and my whole body feels like it's wound too tight. The words came out softer than I'd intended, almost breathless. Santos nodded, his dark eyes studying me with professional interest that somehow felt personal. "I understand completely. High stress, long hours, it settles in the shoulders, the lower back, creates knots that conventional massage sometimes can't reach." He gestured toward the table. "Would you like to start face down? I'll step out while you get comfortable." As he moved toward the door, I caught a hint of his cologne, something warm and masculine that made me want to lean closer. "Actually," I heard myself say, "could you explain what kind of massage you'll be doing? I want to make sure I'm prepared." He turned back, and for a moment our eyes met in a way that felt charged. "I practice a combination of techniques: deep tissue, Swedish, some pressure point work. I like to read the body's responses and adjust accordingly." His gaze dropped briefly to where my hand rested on the robe's belt. "Some clients find it more intense than they expect, but also more effective." The word intense hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and he stepped out with that same fluid grace. My hands shook slightly as I untied the robe, letting it fall to the chair. The cool air kissed my skin as I slipped beneath, the sheet on the massage table face down, my heart beating faster than it should for a simple spa appointment. When Santos returned, I felt his presence before he spoke. "Comfortable?" he asked, his voice closer than I'd expected. I could sense him standing beside the table, could almost feel the heat radiating from his body. "I'll start with some oil to warm your muscles. Let me know if the pressure is too much or not enough." The first touch of his hands was electric. He started at my shoulders, his palms spreading warm oil across my skin with long, smooth strokes that made me suppress a sigh. His fingers were strong but gentle, finding the knots of tension and working them with a patience that spoke of real skill. But there was something else in his touch, something that made every nerve ending come alive. "You carry a lot of stress." "Here," he murmured, his thumbs working deep into the muscles along my spine. "Your body is beautiful, but it's holding on to so much tension." The compliment was delivered so naturally, so professionally, that I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the way his voice dropped slightly on the word beautiful. His hands moved lower, working along my ribs, his fingers occasionally brushing the sides of my silhouette in a way that made my breath catch. Each touch sent warmth spreading through me, and I found myself relaxing into the table, my body responding to his ministrations in ways that went beyond simple muscle relief. "Turn over for me," he said softly after what felt like hours. "I want to work on your front muscles. A lot of tension settles in the chest and stomach from stress." My heart raced as I carefully turned beneath the sheet, very aware of how little it covered, how his eyes seemed to take in every curve before he professionally adjusted the fabric. He began working on my arms, his strong fingers kneading the muscles from shoulder to wrist, but I was acutely aware of how close his body was to mine, how his warmth seemed to envelop me. When his hands moved to my collarbone, his touch became lighter, more exploratory. "These muscles here," he said, his fingers tracing along the delicate bones, "they hold a lot of emotional tension. May I try something that might help release it?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. His hands settled on my shoulders, thumbs working, in small circles that gradually moved closer to my throat. The sensation was intoxicating, intimate in a way that made my whole body respond. I felt my breathing deepen, my lips parting slightly as waves of relaxation mixed with something much more dangerous washed over me. "Your body is responding beautifully," he murmured, his voice low and warm. "I can feel the tension melting away." His hands moved lower, working the muscles around my collarbones, his touch confident and sure. Some clients find this particular technique very releasing. The sheet had shifted slightly, and I was aware of how much skin was exposed, how his eyes seemed to linger on the curves of my silhouette. When his hands moved to work on my stomach muscles, his fingers pressing gently into my skin, I couldn't suppress the soft sound that escaped my lips. "Good," he said quietly. "Let yourself feel everything. Don't hold back." His hands moved in slow circles, working lower, each touch sending electric shocks through my system. "Your body knows what it needs." The professional boundaries were blurring, and we both knew it. His touch lingered, his fingers traced patterns that had nothing to do with massage therapy and everything to do with the chemistry crackling between us. When he leaned closer to reach a different angle, I could feel his breath on my skin, warm and inviting. "I should tell you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't usually offer extended sessions, but if you're interested, I could continue this in a more private setting. My personal studio has equipment that allows for deeper work." My rational mind screamed warnings, reminded me of my marriage, my responsibilities, the ring I'd left in the locker with my clothes. But my body was singing under, his touch, awakening in ways it hadn't in months. The attention, the skill, the way he made me feel like the only woman in the world. It was intoxicating. "What kind of deeper work?" I asked, my voice husky with desire I couldn't hide. His smile was slow and knowing. "The kind that addresses all the tension your body has been holding. The kind that leaves you completely satisfied." His hand rested on my stomach, thumb tracing small circles that made my whole body tighten with anticipation. "It would just be us. No interruptions, no time limits, just focused attention on exactly what you need." I knew I should say no, should gather my things, and leave, should go home to my distant husband and my predictable life. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "Yes." Santos's eyes darkened with satisfaction. "Good. Let me finish here, and then we'll go somewhere more private." His hands resumed their work, but now every touch felt like a promise, every stroke building toward something that had nothing to do with therapeutic massage. He worked in silence for several more minutes, his hands moving with new purpose, new intimacy. When he finally stepped back, I felt cold without his touch. "Get dressed," he said quietly. "I'll wait outside and then take you to my studio." My hands trembled as I slipped back into my clothes, very aware that I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But the anticipation thrumming through my body, the way he'd made me feel alive and desired and beautiful, overrode every sensible thought. I wanted this. I needed this. Santos was waiting by the reception desk, having changed from his uniform into dark jeans and a fitted black shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders. He looked less like a massage therapist and more like a man who knew exactly what he wanted and how to get it. "My studio is about 10 minutes away," he said, his hand settling on the small of my back as he guided me toward the exit. "Very private, very discreet. You'll feel completely comfortable there." The ride in his car was filled with electric tension. He drove with one hand, the other resting on the center console close enough to mine that our fingers occasionally brushed. Each accidental touch sent jolts of awareness through me, and I found myself stealing glances at his profile, at the strong line of his jaw, the way his shirt pulled across his chest. His studio was in a converted warehouse in a quiet part of town, the space clearly designed for privacy. "I only bring special clients here," he said as he unlocked the door. "Clients who need more personal attention." The interior was stunning: exposed brick walls, dim lighting, and a massage table that looked more like a piece of luxury furniture. Candles were already lit, filling the space with warm, flickering light and the scent of sandalwood and vanilla. Soft music played from hidden speakers, creating an atmosphere that was equal parts relaxing and seductive. "This is beautiful," I breathed, turning slowly to take it all in. When I faced him again, he was watching me with an intensity that made my knees weak. "Not as beautiful as you," he said simply, stepping closer. "I've been thinking about continuing our session since the moment I first touched you." His hand reached up to trace my cheek, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. "You felt it too, didn't you? The connection?" I nodded, unable to speak, my whole body humming with anticipation. His touch was gentle but confident, his dark eyes studying my face as if memorizing every detail. "Let me take care of you the way you deserve," he murmured, his lips now inches from mine. "Let me show you what your body has been craving." When his mouth finally met mine, it was like a dam bursting. All the tension, all the anticipation, all the electricity that had been building between us exploded into movement. His lips were soft but demanding, his hands sliding into my hair to hold me closer. I melted against him, my body responding to his touch with an intensity that shocked me. He pulled back slightly, his breathing uneven. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his thumbs stroking along my jawline. "Once we cross this line..." "I'm sure," I whispered, and I meant it. In this moment, nothing existed but him and me, and the need burning between us. His smile was slow and devastating. "Then let me undress you properly this time," he said, his fingers finding the hem of my shirt. "Let me see all of you." The clothes came off slowly, deliberately, his hands and mouth exploring every inch of skin as it was revealed. He worshipped my body with a reverence that made me feel like a goddess, his touch skilled and passionate in equal measure. When he lifted me onto the massage table, now stripped of its clinical pretense, I was already trembling with need. "You're incredible," he murmured against my throat, his lips tracing a path down my collarbone. So responsive, so perfect. His hands mapped every curve, every sensitive spot, building the tension between us with masterful patience. When he finally joined me on the table, his body covering mine, the sensation was overwhelming. He moved with the same controlled grace he'd shown during the massage, reading my responses, adjusting his touch to drive me higher. Every caress, every kiss, every whispered endearment in his native language sent me spiraling toward a peak I'd forgotten existed. "Let go," he breathed against my ear, his voice rough with his own need. "Let me feel you come apart." And I did. The climax crashed over me with an intensity that left me gasping, my body arching against his as waves of pleasure consumed me. He followed moments later, his own release powerful and complete, his arms tightening around me as if he never wanted to let me go. We lay entwined afterward, our breathing slowly returning to normal, skin damp with exertion and satisfaction. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my back, and I could feel his smile against my hair. "That was..." I started, then trailed off, unable to find words. "Perfect," he finished for me, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. "You're perfect." The rest of the night passed in a haze of passion and tenderness. We made love again on the soft rug beside the table, then once more in the small alcove he'd set up as a recovery area. Each time was different, sometimes urgent and desperate, sometimes slow and exploratory, but always intense, always perfect. As dawn light began to filter through the high windows, reality started to creep back in. I found myself staring at the ceiling, Santos's arm heavy across my waist, his breathing deep and even beside me. What had I done? How could I go home and face my husband with the scent of another man still on my skin? But even as guilt tried to take hold, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. For the first time in months, I felt alive, desirable, completely satisfied. Santos had awakened something in me that I'd thought was dead, had shown me what I'd been missing, what I deserved. He stirred beside me, his arm tightening slightly. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured, his voice husky with sleep. "How do you feel?" "Different," I admitted, turning to face him. "Like I've been asleep and just woke up." His smile was soft and understanding. "That's what good therapy does," he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "It helps you remember who you really are." As I dressed to leave, Santos wrote something on a card and handed it to me. "My private number," he explained, "for when you need another session." I tucked the card into my purse, my fingers lingering on the smooth paper. "Will I see you again?" I asked, suddenly vulnerable. "Whenever you want," he said, pulling me close for one last kiss. "I'll be here." The drive home was surreal. I kept catching glimpses of myself in the rearview mirror, expecting to see some visible sign of what had happened, some mark that would give me away. But I looked the same, maybe a little more relaxed, a little more alive, but nothing that would scream infidelity to a casual observer. My husband was already gone when I got home, a note on the kitchen counter saying he'd had to leave early for meetings. I stood in our pristine kitchen, surrounded by all the trappings of my organized, predictable life, and felt like a stranger in my own home. A shower washed away the physical evidence of my night with Santos, but nothing could erase the memory of his touch, the way he'd made me feel. As I got ready for work, slipping back into my professional armor of tailored suits and careful makeup, I caught myself smiling at my reflection. The day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls, but underneath the familiar routine, something had shifted. I found myself more confident, more assertive, carrying myself differently. When my assistant complimented me on looking radiant, I just smiled and thanked her. That evening, as I sat across from my husband at dinner, watching him scroll through his phone while mechanically eating, I fingered the card in my purse. He asked about my day in the absent way that had become his habit, not really listening to my answer, and I wondered if he would even notice if I told him the truth. "I had a massage yesterday," I said casually, testing the waters. "At that spa Sarah recommended." He mumbled, not looking up from his screen. "That's nice. You needed it." The casual dismissal stung, but it also confirmed what I already knew. We were roommates, not lovers. Partners in the business of life, but strangers to each other's deeper needs and desires. Later, as he watched television with the sound turned low so he could work on his laptop simultaneously, I excused myself and went upstairs. In the privacy of our bedroom, I pulled out Santos's card, running my thumb over the elegant script of his name. I could text him, I could go back, I could have more of what he'd given me. Attention, passion, the feeling of being truly seen and desired. The rational part of my mind listed all the reasons I shouldn't, but my body remembered his touch, the way he'd made me feel alive. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Thinking of you. Hope you're feeling the benefits of yesterday's session. S." My pulse quickened. He was thinking of me. After everything we'd shared, he'd taken the time to reach out, to make sure I was okay. When was the last time my husband had done something like that? I typed and deleted several responses before settling on something safe. "Thank you. I feel much more relaxed." His reply came quickly. "Good. Remember, I'm here whenever you need another treatment. My schedule is very flexible for special clients." I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Downstairs, I could hear my husband on a conference call, his voice discussing profit margins and quarterly projections with the same passion most people reserved for their lovers. "When would be good for you?" I typed, then hit send before I could change my mind. "Tomorrow evening? 7 p.m.? I have some new techniques I'd like to try with you." The suggestion made my whole body tighten with anticipation. I was already thinking about his hands on my skin, the way he looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world, the way he made me feel like I mattered. "I'll be there," I replied. As I put my phone away and got ready for bed, I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't ready to blow up my life, wasn't ready for the complications and chaos that would come with leaving my marriage, but I also wasn't ready to go back to feeling invisible, unsatisfied, half alive. Santos offered me something I needed, something I deserved. Maybe it was selfish, maybe it was wrong, but it was also the first thing in years that had made me feel like myself again. My husband came to bed an hour later, settling beside me with barely a good night. As he fell asleep within minutes, his back turned to me. I stared at the ceiling and thought about tomorrow evening, about Santos's hands, his voice, the way he made me feel cherished and desired. Would my husband notice if I started taking more spa appointments? Would he care if he did? As his breathing deepened into sleep beside me, I already knew the answer. He was too wrapped up in his own world to pay attention to mine, too focused on everything else to see what was right in front of him. Some secrets are meant to stay hidden, locked away in places where they can't hurt anyone. But some secrets feed the soul, give us what we need to survive in worlds that don't see us, don't value us the way we deserve to be valued. As I finally drifted off to sleep, Santos's card still tucked safely in my purse, I smiled. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life, like you were just going through the motions while your real self slowly disappeared? Sometimes we have to take what we need to feel alive again, even if it means crossing lines we never thought we would. What would you do if someone made you remember who you really were underneath all the roles and responsibilities? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone and love hearing your thoughts. And before you go, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss these intimate stories. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.